So I first met Hyatt 2 years ago. I interviewed him to come to Zenith, and I was so excited to have him join the community. And then he decided at that time not to come, and I was like really bummed out. I was like, man, that guy's great. And then last winter, I got this email like, hey, from Mr. Lambert being like, hey, Hyatt Chabot, like he's coming your way. And I was like, finally, we didn't miss our chance, and I'm so glad. Just about every day that Hyatt is at Zenith, he willingly starts our gratitude circle and always just like has something just like positive and warm, and he says it with a smile on his face. And it just like Caroline spoke to, it starts the day off. It's such a good feeling. The superlative, just did superlatives, and his was most likely to light up a room. That's what his smile does. That's the feeling that he gives you. So when we cook lunch every week, and there was one day that like we were cooking together and it was not going so hot, and Hyatt got frustrated, and all of a sudden like the other Red Day kids just like pitched in and were like, what do you need? Like, what do you need? We can help. And like turned everything around immediately. And then I remember another day that like you were super upset because food wasn't going well, and I thought he was like mad or I don't know, and I was like, hey, are you okay? And you were just like, I'm sorry. I was like, what are you sorry for? You're working so hard. Like that's like the humility and hard work that you put in all the time. So because of the way that he is, like he has become, like we're lucky that he has a brother here in the audience, and really, not in the audience, in the senior class, Jaden, and really he became like everybody's big brother, like this example of like how to be a grown-up and how to be upbeat and how to work hard. I just wrote here, mature, has his business together, italics. Yeah, so John.
So the word that was chosen for you is beacon. The definition for beacon is a light or other object serving as a signal, warning, or guide at sea or in air, but also someone who inspires and encourages others. And that's what we saw constantly in the classroom, in the community. You always were leading by example, creating safe passage for those around you. You were choosing to help others even when visibly it might not have been what you wanted to do, but you always chose to take that route. And you find the light in everything. You're always optimistic. So for these reasons, we see that you're just wise beyond your years, able to look into the future and make those decisions that make everything bright for you and those around you right now.
Cecil. All right, so Cecil has been on my radar since he was a young man because he's another person with a brother in the audience. James is a fond former student. Yeah, there he is. Yeah, James Heal. So I always knew who Cecil was, and sometimes we get these emails that are like, hey, have you seen so-and-so, he's missing from class, and I knew that you were James's brother, and I was like, Cecil White, like why doesn't that guy come to Zenith? And finally I like sent this email to, I think to Mr. Lambert, and I was like, hey, what about Cecil White? And I guess what I want to say, man, is I'm so glad that, I know it wasn't until senior year, but I'm so glad that you made it to Zenith. So the first day of school, Cecil came to Zenith, no one else was there, miscommunication, and I was like telling some crazy story about something. Cecil looked at me, do you remember what you said? I was like, oh, drama, kids, gossip, and you looked at me and you're like, you're in deep. And I was like totally right on, right? And I was like, oh my God, make me a t-shirt that says Zenith, you're in deep. And that's like a long-standing thing for me. And Cecil is really one of the only people who has espoused my like Zenith, like absurd phrase thing. So anytime something funny would happen, Cecil would be like, zenith, like blah blah blah, you know. And I appreciate that so much. But really, the other thing that I appreciate about Cecil is his like incredibly sincere, always a little bit humorous, but like really direct communication, right? Cecil will like look you in the face and say something like super deep, and you'll be like, "Are you kidding?" And he'll be like, "No, I'm not kidding. Like, I really want to know." Like, you're the kind of person who like you can trust for like a solid handshake and like looking you in the eye. It's true. Another thing, so yeah, and just like bringing that element of like a real, authentic, deep conversation. Another shout out I want to give is that Cecil's the kind of person that like if you're unloading the dishwasher, you can just be like, pass him a dish and you know that he'll just take it and put it away. And I have to say, there's another older sibling, Christian Diebler, in the audience, and I said the same thing at your speech, and do not underestimate how powerful it is to be somebody that is just like relied on to get something done, and like literally physically being there and just doing it, just putting the dishes away because it needs to get done. So we wanted a word that like embodied this feeling of like being open and honest and sincere and real, and I even said earnest, and then we looked up what the word meant, and it actually means serious. So earnest, like we think of it as being like sincere, right? But the definition is serious and zealous in intention, purpose or effort, with deep and sincere feeling, fervent, impassioned. But it actually, this is what I was telling you, it comes from Middle English, and it has this thing about battle in it, right? Earnestness, like in battle, you're gonna work really hard, and I think that there is a side of you that is like fighting and is sometimes warring, even against your own classroom teachers.
And I'll just add to that, we could always like count on you to like meet the limits of the silliness. The silliness would happen, but if you said like this is it, just you need to back it off, you always did, and then you didn't go back up over that line again. And so that earnestness and respect is always appreciated. But like a favorite piece for me is that phrase of yours of trust the process. And at first I didn't, and I would be kind of just like getting my hands in there to try to stop whatever was happening because I didn't. But you taught me to trust the process, and the epitome of that was the trebuchet that you made with Jaden, a full-size trebuchet, and every aspect of that machine was like had just such exquisite detail to it, to bearings that were holding the weights, to the safety rope that made sure that everyone around the trebuchet was safe and in a safe passage. And I just so appreciated that, and that was a demonstration of that earnestness. That's your approach towards things.
So we are so glad that you made it to Zenith. You said something to me once about joining the Marines, and I was like, I don't want you to get killed. And you're like, you're not going to know me. And I was like, I hope that's not true. Like, I will know you. You're still a person in my life, and we will continue to care about you. And I just want to say, like, you have a lot to give the world, and I hope you find a way to do that, because the world needs you. And some Zenith t-shirts that I wanted to make in Cecil's honor were Zenith, don't tell me what to do. To which my response was Zenith, because I said so. But really the one was Zenith, better late than never. Congratulations. Okay, so Isaiah, when I first met you, you were just like so chill and kind and sweet and just like eager and like looking forward to coming to Zenith, and just like in our first interview, so thoughtful. I was like, really, like this would be amazing to have you at Zenith. It was so easy. You came in and you're pretty quiet and shy at first, and really the only thing that stood out was like you on the balance board. Just like that was the only thing that was like, but the more we got to know you, we like start to see this other side coming out. any enthusiasm, like March was just like a sleigh, or sleigh, which I love. And really, like, one of my favorite ways to get to see a window into like what's behind the exterior of Isaiah is Cam's looking at me because she knows what I'm about to say. If you can like sidle up to Cam and Isaiah when they start talking about like, I don't know what, celebrity gossip, number one, first and foremost, you will like learn some things and you will be like handsomely entertained at the same time. It is like a personal, like such a piece of flattery when sometimes like Isaiah will say to me, girl, and I'm like, oh, I am cool enough to be called girl by Isaiah. But really the other thing, Isaiah, that like I loved about you in history class is like, you have this way of just really matter-of-factly offering a different perspective from what's being said. You're just like, no, I don't think it's like that. Here's how it really is. I'm gonna explain why. And I'm not just uncomfortable about it. And because you're not uncomfortable, other people are willing to like actually listen to a different perspective on things. It's incredibly impressive and also really valuable. As the year passed, like, I'm thinking about how at the end of the year, Isaiah threw together this paper, like he had to get it done. He like pieced it together from all these different notes, and then it like came together, and I read it and I was like, this paper is amazing. He was like, I didn't even work that hard, and in a way felt disappointed. To which I said, if this is what you can do when you're just piecing it together, like, you know, because you have to get it done, like that is indicative of so much skill and just like intelligence and prowess. Or just like that video John took of you and Maddie just like doing that math at the end of the year. You have had a ton on your plate, right? But you are able to like somehow effortlessly do these incredibly like I feel like we discovered, which you probably already knew, you had this like incredible graphic skill. John was like, have you seen what Isaiah made? I was like, what? So I really wanted a word for you that like expressed like something that is just so like beautiful at such a high level. So the word that we chose for you is sublime.
So the definition, the working definition is to render finer, extremely good, beautiful, or enjoyable. If you go for the chemistry, the science part, it's to change directly from a solid into a vapor when heated, and typically that vapor will form back into a solid again as it cools. But if we look at the root of it, it's between the word sub and lumen, and the idea of being on the knife's edge, right between the level of a god and just below the level of a god. And so that sense of like almost purity, almost perfection. So as Emily said, we're always surprised and like amazed by your artistic renderings and the things that you made, whether it was tessellations in geometry or the Wally for the volume project. And then if we look at the metaphoric level, you're just teetering on this edge between being an adult and a teenager, and in a sense, like kind of skipping some of the steps that some teenagers typically do. You kind of going from that solid to that vapor in the adult world. So it seems like a really good.
So I first got to know Cordelia just secondhand through her friends that were already at Zenith, and how much like excitement there was when you were coming back from Florida, rejoining the Camden Hills community. But one of the first things I got to know about Deals was just like how like going to the high school was really anxiety provoking, and I was really grateful that you were able to join Zenith really soon after getting back. But Cordelia has been wearing this sweatshirt since like junior year when she started, and it said across the back, your anxiety is lying to you. And it was funny to me at the time because like she was still really anxious like a lot of the time. And I love that because it's what happened. It's like wearing the sweatshirt enabled you. Like you were planning for that time when you totally needed stuff. You like made it happen through like knowing you wanted it, you know? Cordelia is wicked smart. She actually, similarly to Isaiah, has this way of just like saying the thing that needs to be said in class and like bringing out some element of what we're discussing at Teach History, bringing out some element that like other people haven't thought of, or asking some question that like totally transforms. Often I'd be like, I gotta write that down, like that's really deep, we gotta come back to that. And then like her effortless art skills, like the beautiful butterflies that you drew for your project. They're beautiful. So if I think about that anxious old self and I think about who Cordelia has become, it is best, I was hoping we'd be inside so I could show you this picture, but it is best demonstrated by the roller coaster on the Washington trip. So it's been very good with it. So I went on the Washington trip. Cordelia had never been on a roller coaster before. I agreed to go on like a rinky-dink, like we thought it was going to be a really not too scary roller coaster. And it's one of those ones that like takes a picture when you like zoom by. And there is a photograph, and I will show it to you later at the reception if you like. Cordelia is like just like total exuberant joy, and I'm sitting like, am I right next to you, or am I like right in front of you, with just like such a look of almost like petrified disgust. Like I'm so afraid, and it just is like such an example of like, Delia, you just like shed that part of yourself, and you emerge as this totally joyous, exuberant person. And also just I want to say, like, MCST man, you killed it, and I'm just so proud of you. So we wanted a word that described that quality of like having an intention and making it happen, right? And that power of belief.
The word is manifest, to attempt to attain something desired by thinking or focusing intensely on it, especially as a spiritual or self-help practice, to prove and put beyond doubt or question. And how we see it fitting is that you are so very definite what you set forth in the future. You say that this thing is going to happen, that it's going to be done, you're going to reach these goals, and you create this clear, like, true manifest, a list of these things, like of the steps you're going to take and what's going to happen, and you make it happen, and so you make it manifest as well. So it's both the noun and the verb.
We're so proud of you, Jill. Look at your face. I'm loving it. I feel like when I first met Cam, she was like tentative, like a little bit unsure of herself, like wanted to do good, tried really hard, but like came to Zenith, and then like you came first at the start of second quarter, came in and just was like trying to find her place. And then it was sort of like slow, but then all of a sudden, I feel like there was this shift, and everybody around, some of your friends already knew, but everybody was just like, damn, you are hilarious. Like, oh my God, just making incredibly astute, witty, funny comments. What did I write here? Shrewd observations about the human condition in a low voice to the person next to her. I sort of see her like an old-time movie star, like, I don't know, like, you know, like with one of the cigarettes in the holder being like, well, honey, like just like slaying everybody, right? And it gave me this idea, like we used to talk junior year about like, what is Cam gonna be when she grows up? And I just feel like I can see you, I was like, you would be such a good investigative reporter. And then we were like, no, you'd be a really good comedic actress. And then we were like, you should be a comedic actress who plays an investigative reporter. We were like, you can, whatever it is you want to do, you can do it. Cam knows a ton of stuff about the world that like nobody else at Zenith knows, so I can count on her if I want to make a totally outdated 80s reference to some movie or or song, I'll be like, you guys don't know this, and she'll be like, I know what you're talking. I know that scene from The Breakfast Club. Like, she totally gets it every time. I will miss that. But really, the thing that you've given so much of to Zenith is like really wanting to make Zenith a nice place for everybody else. Just like planning a Christmas party with like a movie and treats. And really a very cherished memory from last recognition ceremony when we were planning. Do you remember this? So I'm in my room, we're trying to get a million things done. There was something they needed me to do. And Cam comes in with her clipboard. She like opens the door. She's like, did you remember to order the flowers? And I was like, oh my God. Ugh. And then I just was like, thank you. Do you remember I looked at you, I was like, thank you. She's like, got your back. Oh, just the other thing I want to say is that when Cam wants to give you a hug, sometimes she'll walk up to you like this. And it's the cutest thing ever. So yeah, we wanted a word that represented just this like savvy and knowledge. So we figured out
Sagacious. So having or showing keen discernment, sound judgment, farsightedness. Mentally fixed. And I, that it's that piece that everyone saw of you like in the corner of the couch looking things up the line. But it was always to a fine level of detail. It wasn't just generalizations. Like you could like spout out fine details from that. And then you were generous and caring for the community, always wanting to impart that knowledge and advice. And I'm like especially grateful to you for it because most of the phrases I have no idea what they mean. And you would say, John, and you did it in a way that didn't make it feel too stupid. And then you also warned me off of when I should stop asking questions. It was better just not to know. So always just doing that, quickly connecting with people and making people feel welcome.
So proud of you. Congratulations. Crabtree. All right, this is basically Hunter's idea of like the worst time ever, having people stand up and say nice things about him. So I actually have a lot to say, but I'll try and make it, for your sake, quick and painless. The beginning of my interview, when I interviewed Hunter for Zenith, the first like probably 5 to 7 minutes were like the most awkward moments I've ever had in an interview. Hunter was just like not saying a lot, and I was like, oh my God, like Hazel, his sister's like already at Zenith, like what if this doesn't work? It would just be that would be a bummer. And then luckily, and Mr. Benner isn't here, but luckily he told me that he really appreciates Mr. Benner, a science teacher at the high school. And I know Mr. Benner enough to know his humor, and I was like, that's my end. And I could just get enough pathetic attempts at humor going to make Hunter smile. And then it was like, okay, I got this. This is gonna be great. Hunter has an amazing sense of humor, and we have a Zenith quote book. And I would say that in the past 2 years that he's been here, 90 to 95% of the new quotes in the quote book are some insanely hilarious thing. Hunter said, one of my favorites is we were talking about the tenement museum in New York City and how like back in the day in New York there were just outhouses on the street, and isn't that crazy? In New York City, it's the end of the day circle, all sitting around a room. Like, isn't that crazy? There are outhouses in the middle of New York City, and Hunter just yells out, "Hey, I'm pooping here!" So like, just like so witty and right on. The kids have all heard this one, but really my favorite Hunter quote is not a Hunter quote. It's when I was substitute teaching science class, and we were talking about electricity or something, and actually Colin's older sibling Magnolia was in the class, and Magnolia looks at me and goes, I have a question. And then she turns and she says, it's probably for Hunter. Like, she knew that I was not the person who was going to have the answer to the question. Hunter was going to have the answer to the question. I teach history. I think I have only taught him one new thing once. Like, if I'm teaching class and I want to check a date, I'll be like, does that sound right? More content knowledge than I could ever hope to have. I was gonna like use the word pedantic in a sentence. I'm like, there's no way Hunter's gonna know what that means. And then later, like 2 minutes later in the same conversation, Hunter was like, sorry if that's a little pedantic. Oh my God. But really, I think the thing to appreciate about Hunter shut down the kitchen. Kitchen is closed until kitchen is clean. But Hunter arrives early to school. So we'd come in and he'd see that on the dry erase board. And like without even a perceptible sigh, Hunter just stands up and goes and washes all the dishes, right? When we were trying to pick a superlative for you, there was such an outpouring of just like humor and appreciation for like your sense of humor, your knowledge, just who you are at Zenith and in the world. Every day now, the seniors have been gone for about a week, and every day when I do gratitude in the morning, all I can think is the same three things that Hunter said pretty much every day for 2 years, which is sleep, my dogs, and video games. And I just like am gonna miss you so much saying that every day. I still hear it in my head. So I came across this word, and it describes just somebody who's like, well, I'm gonna tell you what the word is. I wanted something that just like spoke to Hunter's incredible trueness to self. The word is quintessence. Okay, so this is the second, I was hoping this would happen. It's the second time that I'm teaching, only the second time teaching Hunter something new. So this is a Latin root. It literally means the fifth essence, and it's how back in the day people described the cosmos. They didn't know what it was made of. It wasn't earth, it wasn't fire, it was this fifth essence, quintessence. And it has come to mean something that is so incredibly true to itself and just like almost undefinable in that pure quality.
You see you like using that all the time and seeking to understand the root of things, to understand their essence, and then you joke with it, testing the limits of the definition in your understanding of the play. So you're just constantly teaching us as you're exploring what the root is and what the true meaning is of those things. We so appreciate it.
So Hunter, I just want to say that like you probably entered high school knowing everything that a high school graduate is expected to know, and I think this really for you was like an arcane and punitive jumping through of hoops. But I really think that the thing we taught you at Zenith is the thing that matters most, which is that you matter to people, Hunter, and that people care about you, and you bring people so much joy. So please come back and visit us. I'm afraid that you won't. And congratulations. So the thing that to me that is that stands out the most about Michaela is what an incredible capacity she has for learning and change and growth. When I met you, you were just a squishy sophomore. And you started at Zenith and you were pretty quiet and reserved. But also just like so clearly holding your own, like sitting on that couch, taking in the room. Michaela does not suffer fools, right? So if you say something that she does not approve of or she thinks is incorrect, she doesn't have to say anything. She'll just give you that look. She's like, I can't do it. I wish I could do it, right? She'll be like, are you kidding me? Don't make me do this, And in class, Michaela, so my teaching style often is to have like discussions. That is not her style, but she tolerated it incredibly beautifully and instead would take these immaculate color-coded notes, and if she made a single mistake, she'd take the paper and throw it away and then do it again. And she didn't want to always be in the discussion, but when you chose to be in the discussion, you would say incredibly insightful things that again elevated everybody else's learning. I think about how you started to connect to Zenith, and I'm actually glad that Deals, you're sitting right there. One of my favorite things is like when you guys would be in class together and you'd just be talking and I'd be like, oh, like there was like this friendship going out. Like Michaela's an incredibly loyal, true friend. But really, like it is this ability you have to grow and to just get stronger and better is really, I can't think, I've never seen anything like it. And, like, I was trying to think of a word, like, it's almost like plasticity or like pliant, but John figured out the perfect word.
So it's protean, having a varied nature or ability to assume different forms, displaying great diversity and variety. And so it is you flexing and changing and altering yourself in every situation. So you're infinitely flexible and moldable to whatever's happening around you, but you take it another step further, and a protean being is something that changes the world around that being. And so you aren't just assimilated by what's happening around you, you actually are causing change in that world around you as you are flexing and changing. So you're making new things for everyone. So it's a wonderful thing to see.
You can be whatever you want to be in the world, dude, and I, like, really, you can, and you just impress us with how you continue to figure out how to get things done. But as you do that, I know you're going to take care of other people, because you do that all the time, but I want part of that too for you to take care of that. So the first time I met Raylan was at the end of freshman year, such a long time ago, and we had our second interview right here at Old Zenith, and I just remember thinking, like when we decided we were going to accept her to the program, I remember thinking, like, I'm so looking forward to working with this student. Like, I felt like excited looking ahead to the next year. And then fall rolled around, September rolled around, and I get a phone call, homegirl being like, yeah, I'm not coming. And I was like, come on, man, like, come on, like, this is gonna be good. Like, I was so looking forward to working with you. She's like, no, I'm sorry. Like, and we tried to, like, we hashed it out. I, like, tried to convince you. End of the day, it didn't happen. So we had a whole year, and then the following fall, she, like, came in, and a lot of, like, you came in at a funky time in Zenith history, right? And it took a hot minute for you to find your space. And one thing that really stands out, first of all, if you know Ray at all, right? Ray has, John describes it as, I think, swagger, right? Like, Ray just, like, sends this message of, like, who she is. But what really meant a lot to me is when we'd take walks around the building at the beginning of last year and just talk about stuff. So just, like, starting to let people in. And just seeing what, like, a good, loyal friend you are to the people in your life. Baking a ton of delicious foods for us. I feel like Ray's dependability can be summed up with, like, her often phrase, which is, I got you. But really the most, like, I just want this to be, like, foretelling for your future. My favorite memory of Ray is this fall she was in John's class and you guys were doing something, science, microscopes, and she was baking something. So I put a tester in the thing she was baking and brought it to her in class to make sure we didn't, like, overcook her cake. And I swear, like, in the memory, I swear to God you were wearing a white lab coat. Like, your demeanor, I felt like I was walking into a laboratory and seeing a scientist. Like, you don't have to become a scientist, but, like, you just, like, that, like, confidence and, like, self-assuredness and interest. And then I, like, hand her the tester and she tastes it and she's like, yeah, okay, take it out. I was like, okay. Yeah, so we wanted a word that spoke to both, like, this capacity that you have, but also, like, in your artifact that you made for reapplication, that showed this tenderness too. So John found the word.
The word is radical, spelled a little differently. It's the first part of the seedling or growing plant embryo to emerge from the seed during the process of germination. Beginning strength and anchor for what grows above. And the root of the word is root, to seek gravity and groundedness. And a favorite phrase that's just always in my head is Ray is right. That kind of, like, popped up in class, and at first Ray was dumbfounded to like have that like be the phrase, but just time and time and time again, it proved to be right, and you gained confidence in that and in yourself. And radical is a play on words, one that fits so well. So during the time that I got to spend with you, I witnessed you putting down roots, finding those anchor points which let you grow so quickly and securely. And then you also are radical in our more kind of known definition of a word, like sound, spelling, in what you do and represent. You're so incredibly tough and so non-nonsense, while also being so kind and thoughtful. So all of those things all together in one. And I've missed you having you in my classes, and the playful sides of annoyance when I just came up with ideas that were going to be like extra work. You weren't interested in, but we did it.
Right, people, you matter to people, and people believe in you, and they are rooting for you. Maddie joined Zenith at the end of sophomore year and was just at that time incredibly quiet and seemingly shy. School had been rough, anxiety was like making its home in your soul, and we were like really psyched to like scoop you out to Zenith at the very end of sophomore year. And the first thing that you notice if you know Maddie is that she's just incredibly sweet. Like there's this like loyalty and the sweetness. She's like a really loyal friend and a loyal daughter. She's sincere. But then what I start to notice, and we've been joking about this only recently, if I shared this observation with Maddie, the other thing we like notice about Mad is once you get to know her, you like see her across the room, and she'll be like standing in the corner talking with a friend, and she'll all of a sudden she'll be like making like, you know, she's making like really funny jokes, and she's like just talking trash about somebody, and you're like, oh, like that's the other side that we don't get to see in the middle of social studies, right? And you're rugged, like that side like reveals like this toughness that you have, this like incredible grit. Like junior year was super hard, right? You worked so hard to get here, and I just feel like you just kept getting knocked back, and you kept trying. We've known all along that Maddie's a super smart person and a really good student. Really, the only person who wasn't convinced was her. But she knows, you know, you're a hard worker, right? So she just like would give her all in spite of getting set back. One of my favorite things about Maddie in class is like if she doesn't understand something, she'll be like, wait a minute though, like explain evolution to, like, what is the deal with like evolution exactly? And then like explain it, she'll be like, what? Like that is crazy. Like so awesome. Yeah, so John found a word that like describes this quality of just like always coming back and trying again.
So the word is dogged, committed, determined, persistent, steadfast, tenacious, stubbornly consistent, exhausted. And it's kind of like an Indiana Jones film where you're like, these obstacles keep coming up and you just keep pushing through them, one after another. And it's one that we would just constantly see, that you just never became overwhelmed by the obstacles. You just kind of was ready to take them all head on. And the piece of advice would be, just keep looking at that next step ahead, know what's on the map, but don't get too like worried about like how high the hill is, one step at a time. And the last one is that it's okay if there isn't something wrong there. It doesn't have to be an obstacle. So thank you.
So proud of you,